Standing here at the foot of this mountain, I'm not gonna lie to you, I feel incredibly small. I mean, the peak stretches so high, farther than my eyes can even understand. I mean, it's this huge, immovable thing, and there's something in the humility of a mountain, something that grounds you in its immovability, in its constant, stable presence. And mountains have always been those symbols of strength and endurance, symbols of hope. That no matter what chaos is happening in the world, that there is something that is immovable. And there's a beauty to that strength. Now, my friend, when we think about mountains, we think about these unshakable things. We think about them as monuments almost, these symbols. But mountains aren't just symbols. Mountains are also meeting places. All through Scripture, God met his people in a mountain. And there's a beauty to that meeting. There's a beauty to the idea that Moses meets God up on Mount Sinai. There's a beauty to Elijah hearing the gentle whisper of God on Mount Horeb. And there's a beauty to Jesus' transformation, his transfiguration on the mountain. The mountain is the place where we've gone for centuries to see the face of God. And when we look at that symbol, isn't that what spiritual growth is? Isn't it stretching? Isn't it climbing? Isn't it reaching to the heavens that you might expand the scope of your vision? That you might expand your understanding of who you were called to be. And there's nothing easy about that stretching. There's nothing simple about it. It is complex. It is jagged. It is ugly at times. Sometimes it's steep. Sometimes the air isn't easy to breathe. And when you're climbing that mountain, sometimes your legs begin to give up and your lungs begin to gasp for air and you lose hope. But take heart, my friend, because the mountain is where we meet God, where the heavens meet the earth, where we are transformed by every single step. And the only reminder that we need is from Psalm 121, where it says, I lift my eyes up to the mountain. Where does my help come from? My help comes from the Lord, the maker of heaven and earth. And my friends, we look and turn our eyes up to the mountains, that we might see even a glimpse of God in that trek that sometimes seems impossible to climb, in that journey that feels like too much, in that transformation that seems like it will stretch us to our very breaking point. But my friends, maybe that is the point. Our help doesn't come from the mountain. Our help doesn't come from the mountain. Our help comes from the heavens. It comes from God, the one who made the very mountain. And guess what? God walks with us up the mountain. God meets us at the mountain that we might climb it, even when it feels impossible, even when it might feel difficult. And that's our journey of spiritual growth. That when we encounter mountains, we also encounter God. And what we do in that space matters. If you have faith as small as a mustard seed, then you too can move mountains. And as Jesus talks about mountains and moving, he's not talking about literal mountains. He's talking about those obstacles in your life. And if you think for just a moment about your life, I promise you can identify at least one obstacle in your life that feels impossible for you to hurdle. You can identify at least one thing that is standing in your way that you don't see a way around. That's going to be a difficult task. But the truth is, sometimes the smallest bit of faith gives us the most movement in our lives. And our faith is tested, just like a hiker on that rocky path making its way to the summit. We face fatigue in our lives. We face fear. We face uncertainty that things are going to work out in the way that we want them to. And like anyone, we stumble along that path. And we have this desire to give up, to turn back, to abandon this pursuit. But that's exactly the moment that God shows up. God shows up and reminds us that God is bigger than the obstacle, that God is bigger than the mountain. And as we encounter that God, we encounter a God that is stronger than our biggest fear, and that is closer than the very next breath. As I look at this mountain, I think about the people in this state, the people in this area of Colorado that rely on these mountains. They rely on the snow to produce water. And they understand what waiting means. That the winter snows, they don't fall on schedule. That streams will dry up, that the reservoirs will shrink, and yet they wait. They wait. They wait and they trust. They trust that the mountains will eventually release exactly what they need. And that's what our journey of faith is. It's waiting and trusting that God will show up in the exact way that we need God, and being patient enough to endure the journey ahead. My friends, the mountains aren't here to crush us. They are here to remind us, to empower us, to help us grow, that we might become unshakable. And I don't know what the base of your mountain is, whether it's a job that you've just lost, whether it's financial hardship, whether it's a dream that appears to be out of reach, whether it's this dryness that you can't shake. As you stand at the base of that mountain, I need you to know that God isn't distant, that God hasn't abandoned you, that God is right there with you every single step that you take, giving you strength and sustenance and steadying your pace. And the summit, maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, maybe not next week, maybe not next month, maybe not next year, but eventually you'll get there. The mountain isn't meant to break you, but if you'll let it, it'll grow you into who you were called to be. So start climbing and trust that God is right there beside you. Thanks for tuning in.
These are your thoughts, Tatum. This is the hope of God set free. These are your thoughts.